So welcome to today's call. And with me today to kick off season 5 of our show, I have a beautiful soul and a friend of mine, Lorraine, who will be speaking to us about empaths. Now, let me introduce you first. Lorraine Ellen Scott is a Reiki master teacher and inspirational mentor who helps inverted entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers step into their power to thrive in business. With over 20 years of experience in vibrational energy healing, Lorraine uses various tools to empower others to authentically show up with the vitality that they need for sustainable success. And today we're going to talk about, are you an empath? Lorraine, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Angie. Thanks for having me. Ooh, kicking it off. Ooh, that's exciting.
We are kicking off season 5.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. And the thing is, I have so much fun. And okay, for everybody, Lorraine already knows, obviously, but for everybody else, my voice sounds really weird because for some reason, I don't know, it decided to change all of a sudden. But part of what we're doing and part of the reason I didn't want to cancel this is because I'm always honest with you guys. I'm always vulnerable and I'm always telling you how it is. Life doesn't always come out perfect. And as long as I can talk, well, I guess for today, we'll just sound a little bit different.
Yes, life is all about as it is. Perfection doesn't apply.
Yep, yeah. Definitely. And that was one lesson I have had to learn. But that's a topic for another day. Let's actually get back to, so I always like to ask the experts that come on the show, just like I just said, real, honest, down to earth. We're going to talk about empaths, but let's talk about you for a little bit. How was your journey into spirituality and how did you start working with empaths? How did that go for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I realized retrospectively at a young age, I was very sensitive to energy and emotional energy mostly. But it wasn't until I got into Reiki, doing an exchange with somebody. Actually, I'm a registered foot reflexologist, and I did an exchange with a Reiki master and I enjoyed it. And from there, I knew I wanted to bring that into my modalities and things that I worked with people. But it wasn't until after my mom passed that I wanted to learn Reiki for myself, because I instinctively knew it was going to help me heal through all the grief and the stuff that was happening. So fast forward to shifting into a new place, my marriage. I was married to someone who's very volatile with his emotions, and I didn't realize it, but I was on high alert all the time. And it's funny, you don't realize it until you're out of a situation like that you're like, oh, this is normal. That wasn't. So I learned a lot of skills to shield myself from that energy. And even though it wasn't always related or at me or directed at me, I would still feel it and take it on, right? We sponge things in. So that really made a difference in how I wanted to help other people. I think we learn best by our own experiences. And, that's the best way to learn from there, is to just trust and understand that what you go through, there's a reason for it, and it's bigger and greater than you can know. So, yeah. That's how I started out, which oddly enough is taking me in a totally different direction, but that's the adventure of life, Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is, not for anything, but if it wouldn't have taken you on that adventure, and if my path wouldn't have taken me on my path, we wouldn't have met. And I think sometimes God, I can't figure out the word. We don't realize that this little step leads to so many different other things, but it also leads to so many different people that we would have never ever have met and that we have a great connection to. So I think that's a beautiful. How long ago was that?
Well, it was about 20 years ago when I really started to delve into my own spirituality. And gosh, I don't know. Time is strange. The older you get, the less it matters.
Okay. Well, I mean, and the reason I'm asking is because sometimes, because in your bio, I read that it was about 20 years. But the interesting thing is sometimes we change. Like, we're not going to get into my story now, but I've been on this path for like 25 years already. And the way I saw things back then versus the way I see them now, it always has a different level and it always has a different shift. And we're ascending and we're growing and we keep on moving, but we see it just like when we're older to when we're younger. We see life differently. I think with spirituality and everything that we do, and especially the things that you work with other people, especially empaths, there's a shift that everyone kind of goes through. And that's kind of why I love this topic that we're talking about today. And the day that we discussed it, you said you help people discover if they are an empath. And that caught my curiosity because I know what an empath is. And I'm pretty sure 100% that I am one.
Yeah.
But I never realized that until very recently, and the last few years. So when you said you help people realize if they're an empath, what do you look for, or what do they look for? Talk to us about that.
Well, and here's the real secret is that everybody's an empath.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously there's different levels and layers to it. The biggest thing for me, and this was working with people when I still had my Reiki practice, I had one girl come in and she was just overwhelmed all the time. She had to quit work because she just couldn't keep her shit together at work. She would cry all the time. She was like, I don't know what's happening to me. I think I'm going crazy. So I did a Reiki session with her and there were just these layers. Like I felt these layers of emotions that were just coming through. And I said to her, where you live, what's going on around you? Like, in your home. Anyways, the long story short was that she had a neighbor right beside her who was very, very emotional. And I think she was picking up on her energy. And I mentioned to her in one of the upcoming sessions, do you think that you were picking up on her energy? Did you realize that you are an empath? And as soon as I said that, it was like it was the key that unlocked everything that she'd been feeling, because she was, without even realizing it subconsciously, she was holding back energy. And anything, if you hold something long enough, eventually you're just going to be like, I can't do it anymore. And, so people don't realize that they pick up on things all the time. From the moment we're born, we sense things. Some of us learn to close that off, or some of us learn to filter it in a way that we don't take the energy on. It becomes so normal that we don't realize it's even a gift,
Right?
Until somebody shows a mirror to you and you're like, oh yeah, wow. So
Right. And that's kind of also why I said up until just not that long ago is that I realized, oh, okay, maybe I am that. Because all my life I've always picked up on things. I've always been intuitive. And as a teen, I used to love calling it like witchy. And even not even as a teen, in my 20s, 30s, 40s, like always, I'd love calling it witchy because for me it's fun. But picking up on other people's energy without knowing I was picking up on their energy and just feeling these shifts, I would go from like, it was like maniac. Like I would go from being good and happy and this and that to all of a sudden tired and depressed and like worried. But I never thought, or I had never known that I had picked it up from somebody else. So I kept searching and searching and searching. Where was it on me or what happened with that shift? Because I've always used the tools on myself in order to heal whatever's come up. And it was until somebody told me, like, I think you picked it up from somebody else because of your empath. And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? Because I never saw that for me. So she was okay. So she was emotional, and I know I went through those ups and downs. What are other things that people can notice?
for one, you think you're going crazy. you you're tired a lot of the times. I think sometimes you don't sleep well, because that's when you're most open to what's going on.
Okay.
Especially if you're around a lot of people all the time, you don't have that insulation. When I say this, people are like, oh my God, I'm broken. It's not that. It's that you can learn skills, and sometimes people learn them so naturally. It just comes to them that they work with the positive energies around them, that they don't even realize they're creating these things. But back to your question, I'm not just going by my own personal experience. A lot of it was emotion, empath. That's how it relates. But it really comes through people in a different way, because everyone perceives emotions differently. Some people feel it fully, and most empaths do. But sometimes it comes through in some of the other senses that we have. We just have this knowing. And that's the hardest one, because how do you explain that? I just know. What do you mean? I just know. But in that knowing, there's just trusting. There's trusting that what you're picking up is something you're picking up. You're not going crazy. You're not multi-personality. It's just all the different energies. You're trying to figure things out, you know?
Yeah. And I think I went through a lot of that. That's why I laughed. I mean, I actually dated somebody a very long time ago that he would tell me Angie A, Angie B, Angie C, Angie D. He's like, who am I dealing with today? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me.
It all depends on your energy, you
It all
know?
depends on what's going on.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I thought of is, some people I know, I'm like, oh, I just love your personality because you're who you are no matter what. No matter who you're around, no matter who you're with, you're unforgivingly yourself, which is great. I wished I was like that. A lot of empaths tend to morph themselves to be around the people they're with, if that makes sense. You know, if I'm around people who are just softer energy, you know, I'm not going to come in there, hey, guns blazing, look at me. I'm going to be more subdued. And in situations where people are more uplifted and outgoing, that I pick up on that energy and use it too. These are ways that empaths can use these tools for good. When you want to have that energy, you just kind of open the gates a little bit and bring it in and say, let me embody that and go with it. So it becomes a deciding of whether you are going to flow with the energy, or you need to kind of put this filter up so that you don't take on things you don't want to take on.
Okay.
Yeah. People are more aware when they're newly empaths. They're more aware of the negative energy. People talk about that. Oh, you go in a supermarket, you feel everybody's energy. But there's a good side to being an empath that people don't focus on. That I love focusing on that. What's the good thing? What's the superpower of being an empath? And it's knowing your own emotions, your own mental capacities, so that you can differentiate when you're picking up on someone else's stuff. So then you can just, you know, gently close things down and beam love and light and peace in situations where you need to.
Right. Okay. So, question. We just talked about sometimes it's a knowing. How do you know if you are molding into the environment that you're in because you're an empath, or you're molding in because you're trying to be politically correct?
It's your mental process. You would know, because it's like, oh, I have to fit in. I have to fit in here. Oh, I'm standing out too much. You probably have that inner dialogue, as opposed to, wow, I'm just kind of settling in, like I'm getting used to the warmth of the water, so to speak. I think, yeah, it's just inner contemplation. I think more and more of us need to have that inner conversation, and it doesn't have to take all day. You don't have to sit in a stunned mode, just kind of processing, the more time you take to kind of get to know that innerness, the more you realize what your intention is. Is my intention to be politically correct? Because then you're on high alert then, aren't you? You're like, am I going to say this right? It takes longer to inwardly process before you spew it out, as opposed to I'm just in flow with the energy around me, and you harness it, and you become, the more you do that, the more you affect the energy around you as well to bring in what it is you want to achieve.
Okay. I love that. Actually, that answer made it perfectly clear. So it's the inner contemplation of, am I trying to fit in, or am I just going with the flow of what I'm feeling? So it's the mental thought versus the flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's thought versus feeling, because really as humans, we often feel more intensely, but our thoughts can talk us out of stuff or talk us into stuff. It gets us in trouble all the time. No way.
We're not going to talk about all the things it's gotten me.
Yeah. Yeah. And people talk about mindset, and it's like, yes, we set our mind. This is reality, as opposed to mindfulness and having the ability to decide and to decipher. And I know when I talk about this, all my introverts are like already exhausted already because it's too much, but it's just being in flow and trusting, always going to that center within yourself. In any moment, whether you are in the middle of a supermarket and people are yelling and screaming and kids and all this stuff, like, you can totally find your center. It takes a little practice, but the more you do it, you can walk through that like
Nothing.
like nothing. Yeah.
It's funny because I always saw it as I was just getting older, and it just annoyed me. I can't stand going to a mall.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a classic sign.
Yeah, I can't stand going to a mall, and it never really bothered me before. I've never been a heavy shopper. I go in, I browse, and I leave. Like, I've never spent hours, and I mean, when I was a teenager, and probably not even as much as my friends. Like, yeah, but last few years, let's say the last 10 years, like, if I could avoid a mall for the life of me, I'll avoid it. I mean, Amazon is like the best thing in the world for me. Everybody's like, you have to get out more. I'm like, no, I get out, but not that out. Like, no. But that's the thing. So besides working with somebody like you, or besides contacting you, what are ways that people that feel that, like, let's say they have to go to a mall, or they have to work at a mall and they're empaths, what are ways that people can, I don't want to use the word protect, but what are ways that can help them not get so wound up with all the energy that's around them that they're picking up on?
And I love, Angie, that you said not protect, but I find that has a negative connotation to it, because if you feel you have to protect something, that means there's something out there that's bad. So I shifted into shielding your energy, and then I went through a period of, well, shielding is kind of the same thing. So I think of it now as insulating. Like, think of cords and wires. You have that insulation, so you're protecting the energy that's flowing through it. And if there's a kink or something in it, that energy is not going to flow right, or it's going to electrocute somebody or something like that. So really, and to answer your question, it's all about your intention, because the first thing you think about, if somebody says, hey, Angie, do you want to go to the mall? What do you think? That energy. So if you have to go to the mall, Christmas passed, and I experimented with this. My my first thought was, oh, the mall, busy. And then I shifted that. I'm like, it's okay. I'm going to make it fun. It's going to flow the way it needs to go. And I'm not saying I sailed through and found all of the, the things, and people were parting the crowd so I could walk through. But I shifted, wouldn't that be great? I shifted my energy so that I wasn't affected by anybody else anymore, because it's like it's an inner game for me. everyone is going to do what they're going to do. And they're all stressed because they don't want to be there, because it's a mindset. And we've been conditioned to say going to the mall, for example, at Christmas time is brutal. There's even movies about it, but it's what we intend on the inside. And even if it takes a moment when you get to this mall and you shut off the engine of your car and you just sit there for a minute and you breathe and you say, I'm bringing in my intention that it's going to be fun, it's going to be calm, and it's going to work out just the way it's meant to. And 9 times out of 10, it works out. And you're retraining your mind to say, going to the mall isn't bad.
Right.
It's how I choose to show up.
And we're using the mall as a topic, but I mean, I'm thinking in the back of my head, it's like with anything, because
Yes.
family events and relationships and a work meeting or a client meeting or just day-to-day things that we have to do.
Yeah.
We are conditioned, and that's something that I usually talk about. I mean, comes up. We are so conditioned into thinking that the world is hard and you have to struggle and you have to do this. And going back to your example that we just passed Christmas, it's kind of like we're supposed to be giving love and light and fun, and we give gifts from the bottom of our heart. And yet we're so conditioned to buy this and it's on sale and get 1 for 2 and YOLO and buy 1 for you. And everything is money, 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 buy, consume, traffic, people, things are going to run out. Where's the feeling that originated from, I want to gift you something out of the bottom of my heart, and not, where's your damn list? Because I don't know what you want for teenagers. So it's kind of like that shift that I think we're all going through. And even us that are on this spiritual path, we still sometimes get wound up in the conditioning of the world. But it's what you just said, coming with intention to everything we do.
Yeah. And yeah, it's every day. We don't turn off being an empath. We can turn down the volume, or, make sure that filter is really thick, but it's always part of us, and it's how we choose to use it as a tool. And we're the thing with empaths, we want to change the world because we want everyone to be happy and have fun. And that's where it can get really frustrating, because we can't change the world. We cannot change any person except ourselves in how we show up, in how we decide to make that response when things happen to us or around us or to someone else, because we're always more, extend our heart to someone who's suffering. And we feel that if we take that on, maybe it's taking it from them. And no, we have to honor that person is going through what they're going through, because it's going to help create a better experience for them, or they're going to learn a lesson. And we can't take people's stuff on for them. That's not helpful. And it's not honoring their life and their path. That went a totally different direction than I thought it was going to go, but I'm going with it.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and what you said a little while ago, I'm going to tell you a story. So we shouldn't turn off trying to be an empath. And the reason I'm saying that is because many, 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 many years ago, okay, I'll even go further than that. I see angels, and I've seen fairies, and I've seen like all these different things. And I've seen dark things as well. When I saw that, I didn't even want to see the angels and the fairies anymore. I shut everything off. And part of that was being an empath. I also shut that off because I wasn't open anymore. And it took me a very, very, very long time to get back into, oh, I see something there. Oh, this. But even seeing, it took me back to feeling. I stopped feeling for a very long time. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, well, yes, we can do it. I don't recommend it because I did that. And it's what you just said. You shut down a part of yourself. Everything else in my life went down the toilet. Because
Sorry to hear that.
because I wasn't myself. And looking at the good of that, you learn from it, right? But going through it, I'll be perfectly honest, I would never do anything to hurt myself, but I didn't want to be here anymore. And part of what
Mm,
I've realized is being an empath, and I know this isn't the topic, but being a starseed and like all the other things, for a very, very long time, I didn't want to be on Earth anymore because Earth was freaking hard. Like I had those
yeah.
inner conversations with me in a bad way, as in, why did I decide to come here? Like, really? Like, what was I thinking? And then I realized that it was because I had shut down so much of that part of me. I had shut down me. And now that I
Yeah.
picked up myself and I opened up again, and I open up to the good and the bad, because I'm not scared of the bad anymore. I'll see it, but it's like, no, buddy, I know how to deal with you now. Like, no. Before it was like, I don't want to see anything, anything. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and the reason I think it's flowing, is because I think a lot of us, or a lot of people right now, with the shift, with the energies that are changing, with all of us doing the work that you and I are doing with other people, the point of us coming, at least the point for me coming, was in order to innate this shift. And a lot of people don't understand what's going on. And they might be thinking, okay, maybe I felt like that, but then I don't. So maybe I am an empath, but I'm not. But then what would your take be on that for people that might be feeling something like that?
And that's totally valid. Avoidance is something, it's instinctual. It's part of the fight, flight, freeze, right? Or better yet, avoid. I'm not going to do that. Bye.
Yeah.
The bottom line is everything is energy. And empaths, we're picking up on energy, whether it's thoughts, emotions, the environment around us. If we close that off, we're shutting off an essential part of that spiritual energy, that divine energy that helps us have the vitality to be a soul in a human form.
Mhm.
So when we're trying to squelch something, I go back to that example of the cord,
Mhm.
the wire that's encased. If you kink, or even think about a water hose, if you kink it, it shuts off the flow. And you're like, okay, well, great, that shut the flow off. But at some point, there's that crimp that's damaging something. And I, that's kind of a harsh word. Damage doesn't mean permanent. It just means that, hey, there's a heads up, you need to shift and you need to do something about that. But yeah, it's all about energy. And when you realize that, like if you've got all this negative energy coming at you in the form of, people reacting and emotions, and it's like, well, how can I shift that? It's funny because I'm a big Harry Potter fan. And there's a part in one, like the third to last movie or something, where Voldemort actually is, dueling with Professor Dumbledore, and he's shooting glass at him, and Professor Dumbledore actually shifts it into light rain or water. So it doesn't have that same effect on him as what was intended. So we all have the power within ourselves to shift how that energy eventually gets through to us. We can't control how the other person is sending it, whether they realize they're doing it or not. That's not the point. It's like, how do you want to receive the energy that's around you, that's coming to you? You
Right.
always have a choice.
Right. And I think like in the cartoons, because that's beautiful. Like when you said that, I think in the cartoons, it always shows like this magic and like the fairy dust and the whole thing. In spiritual terms, we can transmute it, right? So it's like
Yes.
imagining whatever energy, like that's what I just pictured when you were talking. It's like this energy coming at you, but you have like this fairy glitter, in front of you, and it transmutes it. And by the time it gets to you, it's like love and petals and unicorns and horses, and it's whatever you want. But it's reminding ourselves how we can use that, because what I love about the fairy dust, it's sparkly things. It's not a wall. And I think
Yeah.
many of us are walled in ourselves, and yet we don't let anything out either.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes a one way or a no way,
No
even
way.
worse.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
why I like to picture what, or find out through the person that I'm working with what is their visual. And I love that yours is like fairy dust and sparkles, because it, you know, it feels lighter. It feels like, oh, you know, and not everything is the same. There's, you can get through the energy, there's space.
Right.
But when there's a wall, yeah, like, you know, it's like, fine, you see a wall, what tool can you use to get through that wall?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you need a hammer or a sledgehammer? Maybe you have a magic feather that you just do, and it just
Yeah.
shifts. But yeah, the word that I picked up on that sometimes eludes me is what you said, transmute. That's totally what it is. You have the power of your own mind and your feelings to transmute to how you want to feel. Transmutation and intention are very powerful tools that we all have available to us at any time.
Yeah. Beautiful. So we're running out of time. I wanted to thank you for joining us, but how do people get in touch with you? How do they connect with you? What are you offering? Where do we send them?
Well, currently my website is simplehealingarts.com, and there's, you know, some downloads available there for, you know, if you want to become more natural at networking. Like, I have a lot of stuff based on the introverted entrepreneurs that I work with. I'm also on social media, empaths and introverts. If you search that, you can find me there. And yeah, I'd love to connect. And if you
Awesome.
have questions, you know, there's always support.
Yeah. And definitely for people that are empaths and they have maybe already known and they don't know how to deal with, or maybe with this video, they're going to be like, oh, okay, maybe that sounds like me, because everybody's at a different level. So I encourage everybody to actually reach out to you, because yeah, it's a top. I mean, all of our topics are very, you don't need to do it alone, but mostly that is such, being an empath, it's so like ingrained in us. We sometimes don't notice. That's why I love today's topic. We sometimes don't notice we are that. So Lorraine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Angie. It was such a great convo. Appreciate you.
All right, everybody. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.